I wake up early these days. Not because I've got a job, which I don't, and not because I like getting up early, which I fucking don't. It just happens. Some days, really early, there's a small nugget between nighttime and daytime when there's no weather. Nothing's going on. It just hasn't started yet. I assume this is because on those days, the board meeting of the Jews who control the weather has overrun, because they couldn't come to an agreement in time about if it should be good weather or shit weather. I guess different factions have particular skin in the game about what exact temperature it should be in Scunthorpe on a Wednesday or whatever. I was having an argument in a thread with somebody about this. He was all like, if the Jews control it, how come there's still weather on Saturdays? Well, I had to explain to him that obviously they'd have a Shabbat team of Goyim workers to oversee stuff in their absence, and anyway, that's only really the Haredi and the Hasids. They're not all the same, you know. Fucking racist idiot. I wake up early these days. I always go to bed at 11 p.m, because that's an 11 and a 23 at the same time, so it probably counts double. I don't sleep straight away, as it takes a while for all the circles to slow down, and I don't always notice when it turns 11 minutes past 11, but when I do, I always remember it. I wake up around 5 a.m. Seems like the noise in my brain starts midway through my final dream cycle of the night and gets louder and louder until I just fucking wake up. Then I sit up and smoke ciggies. I smoke a lot of ciggies. I should probably cut down or something. I don't trust those vapes. I'm pretty sure that's where COVID came from. We hooked one up to the new 5G sensor John had bought, and it was kicking out so much 5G that the sensor wouldn't even turn on. Mental. I wake up early these days, and whilst I'm smoking, I like to have something to look at or to read. I used to stare at John's tarantula. John left a few months ago. He said something about going to go piss off the edge. That could mean a few different things, and I didn't have time to ask him to clarify, as he basically just stood up and fucked off. He didn't take anything with him, and he hasn't been back since. So I moved his tarantula bowl into my room so I could stare at it when I woke up. After a couple of days, I realised he hadn't left any food for it, and I didn't know what to feed it. I assumed spiders eat flies, unless all that has been bullshit as well. But it was winter, so there weren't any flies knocking about the flat. I figured the closest thing to flies that I had was a bag of raisins in the cupboard. They basically looked the same, so I reckoned I could trick him into eating them, and some fruit would probably do him some good. Apparently not. The tarantula died. At least I think it died. It stopped moving, and it's kept on not moving. Maybe it's a government spy drone and it just ran out of batteries. Fuck knows. I wake up early these days, and now that there's no tarantula to stare at, I sometimes go straight to checking my calendar for what I should be doing that day. I've made a chart of all the significant dates and what day is what nationally and globally, so I can make sure I try to tick whatever boxes it seems like need ticking and keep everything in alignment. The 2nd of March this year seemed particularly important because that's a double 23, so I even had a shower that day to prepare. I smoke ciggies in the shower if I'm having a proper wash. I've made a little device out of half a fruit shoot bowl that stops them getting wet. First on the list of events for the 2nd of March was World Book Day. Piece of piss. I went to the charity shop and bought 23 copies of the Da Vinci Code that were on the shelves there. Next up was National Rescue Cat Day. This proved a bit more challenging. I went to the local cat shelter and they kept telling me not to smoke in the building. Then they wouldn't even give me a fucking cat, even after I explained I only really needed it for the day. Sometimes I hate going outside. So I realised I was going to have to rescue a cat myself. I don't like stealing, and it was meant to be a rescue anyway, so I walked around looking for the most miserable looking stray cat I could find, so I could scoop him up and give him a lovely day back at my flat, because I figured that counted as a rescue. It took a while, but I found a really fucking miserable one in the alley behind the vape shop in town. All the 5G must have messed with his brain, because he was just hunched there, dribbling and kind of staring at the bin that was about 2 inches in front of his face. So I tried to befriend him by offering him a crabstick. I always carry emergency crabsticks with me around that time of year, in preparation for the 9th of March, which is National Crab Day. Well, technically that's just in America, but that's alright. These crabsticks don't actually have any crab in them anyway. I imagine the Jews took it out years ago. Can't blame them really. Everybody loves a handy pink cylinder, and disagreements about God shouldn't get in the way of that. Really, I just carry them around because I like them, but it's good to have a day to tack them onto, because it probably all counts. The cat didn't seem at all interested in the crabstick. The 5G from the vape shop must have done a real number on the poor fucker, so I tried to just pick him up. And he didn't resist. He just lay in my arms, dribbling and vaguely staring at my face. Then I figured I'd best get the fuck out of Dodge before all the vapey 5G turned me into a bin-staring dimwit too. I got back to my flat and put him down in front of a little pile of crabsticks and a mug of water. He actually tucked into a couple of them this time. I Faradayed my flat and I only used the internet by cable, so he was probably recuperating a bit. I checked the calendar again, and in brackets I'd noted that it was also National Egg McMuffin Day. I know this is just corporate bullshit from that sinister clown, but I was quite hungry and felt like the day was going well and I deserved a treat, so I popped to McDonald's and bought 5 of them. I couldn't afford 23, but 5 acts as an emergency 23 in such situations. On the way back home I started thinking about eggs. Eggs are weird. They're not an animal, but they're not an animal. They're not alive, they just might be at some point if all goes well. They're like a token of potential, like Bitcoin for chicken lives. Or basically, they're the opposite of ghosts. By the time I got back to my flat, I'd thought about eggs way too much and gone off the idea of eating the McMuffins. So I gave them to the cat instead. I don't seem to have much luck with feeding animals, because the cat died as well. March the 2nd is also National Teen Mental Health Day, but I'm an adult, so I do what the fuck I want. I wake up early these days, and it's started getting interesting recently. Some days there's nothing on the calendar, so I had to find something else to stare at while I smoke cigs. I started playing that Wordle game. It makes more sense than those fucking crosswords, and it's a decent 5 out of the way first thing in the morning. And I find it pretty easy. I always start with the word media, then I just match the correct letters with one of the words that make up the noise that's always running through my head. And Bob's your UNCLE, I usually solve it in only a couple of goes. I then found out about Quordle and started playing that. It's a once-a-day puzzle like Wordle, except there are 4 words that you solve all at the same time. And this is when it started to get interesting. After playing Quordle a few days in a row, I noticed that the 4 words seemed to form some kind of slightly obscure phrase, like some kind of message. So I checked back on the last few solutions to see if they were trying to talk to me each morning through the word games. Quordle starts with a Q after all, so I figured it was worth checking out. The first one that caught my attention was Assay, Slant, Nadir, Denim. This really felt like it meant something. After a bit of thinking, I guessed that it meant the rising price of gold would lead to a drop in the value of denim for some reason. So I kept an eye on the share cost of Levi Strauss & Co., and sure enough, there was a drop in price at pretty much the same time as a hike in the price of gold. I don't have much money, so I couldn't invest in Levi's shares while the price was low, but I did go and buy a pair of jeans to show them I was listening. Now that it was confirmed that these were indeed messages, I looked closely at some more of the recent solutions. Next up was Hazel, Beret, False, Coven. I'd recently seen a picture of Ant and Dec both wearing brown hats, so I figured this must mean that I'm a celebrity, get me out of here is just a front for famous lizards and Satanists to engage in dark rituals and trick the public into watching them do it. I fucking knew it. Then there was Delve, Pixel, Miner, Cloak. I took that to mean that Pixie Lott was secretly a tiny witch. I mean, that was fucking obvious anyway. All those child stars are either tools to subliminally spread the messages of the lizards or just future adrenochrome repositories, their glands being fattened up by all the exciting shit they get to do. I don't always immediately figure out what the solutions mean, so I keep a record of them and think about them until it's become clear. Some that I'm still working on are Chest, Shrub, Credo, Below. This one feels a bit obscure, but I reckon it might mean that Russell Brand is an undercover Catholic. And by Catholic, I'm assuming they mean pedo. Parker, Spiny, Bushy, Chair. This possibly means that Liam Gallagher was rendered disabled in an accident and has been replaced by a double, just like McCartney. Being Liam's double must be a pretty easy job. All you'd have to do is swear a lot and not bother getting haircuts. Quasi, Plush, Shoot, Soapy. This one sounds weird and creepy, so I guess it's probably something about that Kwarteng bloke also being a pedo. They're everywhere. So it's all a bit confusing, and to be honest, I'm not sure if these messages are instructions or just facts sent out to watchful people like me to keep us clued in, so we're ready for the storm. On the other hand, it could be a huge disinformation project. It's not nothing, that's for sure. So I've got to keep an eye on it and concentrate. All this information is pretty tiring, and it's a mammoth task keeping tabs on all the pedos, because there seem to be so many of them. I wish everything was easier. I wish there were less pedos and lizards roaming around out there. And I wish foods didn't sometimes lead me off into thought spirals like those Egg McMuffins did. I can barely eat pizza these days because of all the circles and associations it kicks off in my brain. When I particularly want a pizza or have no other option, I have to eat it really fast before all the thinking about pedos catches up with me and ruins my appetite. Crabsticks are mostly fine. Obviously, they sometimes make me think about cancer. But the good thing about the old handy pink cylinders is that you can pretty much just pop them in and slide them down your throat. Job's a good 'un. And I wish everything just matched up and made sense. Look at all our numbers and stuff. Why are there 365 days in a year? It would be so much easier if it was just 360. It would all match up with the minutes and the circles and all that. But they've tacked on those extra 5 days just to fuck with us or something. I always ignore the first 5 days after New Year's Eve to make them not exist. For those days, I just stay in bed with some snacks, trying to decipher the hidden meanings in the cartoon series Adventure Time. It's obviously got some secret messages in it, and Pendleton Ward is clearly a made-up name. So I sit there in bed with the curtains drawn, drawing my diagrams and getting closer to the truth. But all that's on hold for the time being, now the Quordle people are sending it out that way. So, I've got a lot of work to do, and I'm going to need supplies to keep my energy up, so I better go out and do a big stock up of crabsticks. And that reminds me, it turns out the cat's not dead, he's just really fucking stupid. I didn't get round to getting rid of the body straight away, and after a couple of days I noticed that the pile of crabsticks had got smaller. So I put some fresh ones out and sat and watched for a while, just to check. And sure enough, after about 2 hours, he moved ever so slightly, just enough to get a crabstick in his mouth and slowly slobber it into himself. Then he just lay there drivelling. Poor fucker. I wonder if cats can be pedos. God knows what effect all that 5G had on his sex drive. There hasn't been anything in Quirtle about pedo cats, but I'll have to keep an eye on him. I mean, that should be easy enough, seeing as he just lies there on the floor drivelling. Maybe I should test it out by showing him some pictures of kittens and see if his little shiny pink tube pops out. Oh, hold on. Oh, God. Well, I guess I can't eat crabsticks anymore.